Hello and thanks for joining me. As you can see, I'm in the workshop and I'm with my Triumph Scrambler 1200. And I'm making this video today because quite often on forums I see people considering buying the Triumph Scrambler and asking how good is it as a touring bike, as a longer distance touring bike. And well, that's exactly what I use this bike for. But I've made a few changes, modifications to the bike since I bought it to make it really suit me. So I thought it would make an interesting quick video just to go over the changes that I've made to the bike. Very personal, it's changes that work for me so that the bike is suitable for what I use it for, which, as I said, is touring. One of the things I really love about these Scramblers is they're a canvas. And everybody personalises theirs, everybody makes them different. And I love looking on forums and looking at pictures, seeing the way that people have changed their Scramblers. It's one of those bikes which is very easy to make personal. So I've made this one very personal to me. So I'm going to show you what I've done. As I review the changes, I should perhaps just briefly explain that I do a lot of long distance touring. I typically spend about 6 months of the year on the road. And I never intended really to do the touring on a Triumph Scrambler. I used to own a BMW GS 1200, very popular touring bikes, and they are excellent bikes. But I thought it was time for a change, and I was looking at getting the Triumph Tiger 1200, but at the time I couldn't get one. So I got a good part exchange deal on my old BMW, so I took this Scrambler, intending it really just to be a local runaround bike, or so I wasn't touring, and a bit of a stopgap, and then I would change it for the Tiger. Never happened, because I just totally fell in love with this bike. And even though there were certain things about it that weren't ideal for the kind of touring that I do, I thought, you know what? I love so much about the bike that I can either live with or get around the things that aren't so good. So this video is really about how I have changed the bike around to make it the ideal touring bike for me. May not be to everyone's taste, but it works for me. So let's have a look. What I'm going to do is I'll start at the front of the bike and just work back and talk about all the things that I've done. The first thing I talk about is the tyres. I was very unhappy with the stock tyres, as I think a lot of owners are. For some reason, they just weren't very good. I've used the same tyres on other bikes and they were fine, but on this bike, the stock tyres weren't great. So I changed them, and I'm running Continental Trail Attack 3. So I've had a couple of sets of these on the bike now. Been very happy with them. You may be able to see these are getting a bit low. I'll put a fresh set on before I go on my next big tour. And to be honest, I'll probably stick with the same tyres, the Continental Trail Attack 3s. Been very happy with those. Another thing you'll notice is that I have kept the low mudguard. I know a very popular modification is to fit the higher mudguard, or if you're from America, a fender. You call them a fender. It's one of the very few words where the English version is more descriptive than the American one. Anyway, so a lot of people go for the high mudguard or high fender just because of the looks. It gives it that more sort of aggressive off-road look. But the disadvantage of that is that the mudguard doesn't do its job, which is protect, from mud flinging up. If you put it up there, and a lot of people who make that modification end up with mud in the radiator, clogging up the radiator and the bike overheating. So not only have I retained the low mudguard, but I've also fitted a fender extender on the bottom to prevent mud flinging up. It's probably not going to show up too well because it's black, but that's the fender extender. It's carbon fibre, as you can see. I will, in the description to this video, I'll put details, links to all of the products that I'm talking about that I've added to the bike. But that's the fender extender, so just minimises the amount of muck that's thrown up on the bike. So combination of keeping the low mudguard and putting the fender extender on the bottom gives me pretty good protection from fling up from the front wheel. The next modification I made is to put these neoprene fork protectors on, fork covers on. I did that for a couple of reasons. One is I wasn't that keen on the sort of garish bright yellow anodized finish on the forks, the gold finish. I know some people love that, and it's all a matter of personal taste. But the other thing was, I was actually finding that I was starting to get some chipping on it, which was rather annoying. Must be just stones and things flying up. So I was getting some chipping on it. So I thought, to stop it getting worse, I'll just put these on. So I actually made these myself. It's neoprene diving suit material, which you can buy. I just bought this off eBay. Made a pattern, cut it out, and then it's got Velcro fastener up the back, so I can take them on and off to clean the bike, and to make sure I'm not getting additional corrosion underneath. Whilst I've got the camera in this position, you'll see I've also got the auxiliary lights. These are the standard Triumph auxiliary lights, and they're really just plug and play on this bike. There is a switch on the switch console to work them. There is a socket inside the headlight shell, so you just bolt them on and plug them in and you're away. They are useful. They do provide a bit of extra light. I use them in two situations. One is when I'm riding country lanes, dirt roads, what have you, in poor lighting condition in the dark. It definitely makes a very big difference in those situations. And also sometimes I use them only occasionally if the weather's very bad, if it's foggy or the lighting's bad. I use them as auxiliary running lights when I'm on the motorway or on highways. I don't usually run them because it annoys me, these guys with the really, really bright lights, dazzling. But again, it's just a personal thing. As you can see, I've fitted a large touring screen. I made a separate video all about this. In fact, I've made a couple of videos. I made a video about fitting this screen. I also made another video in which I reviewed all the screen options that were available for the bike. I went for the Unit Garage extra large touring screen, and as you can see, it's quite big. If you want to see more details and proportion, watch the other video that I made. But I've been very happy with this screen. It works for me in that I get no buffeting off the screen, and it gives me a great deal of protection at highway speeds. So that for me was one of the biggest mods in terms of comfort for long distance touring. Coming back down on the bike, you can see that I've got the lower engine protection bars. These are the Triumph ones, the standard Triumph ones. And then I fitted higher engine protection bars. These are the SW Motec bars. The reason I originally had the lower bars, because I thought that gives me good protection if I do sort of drop the bike or what have you. But the higher bars I fitted because a friend of mine came off his bike, and when he came off the bike, the bike went down and hit the exhaust. And that ended up actually snapping the engine mounting back. If you've got one of these bikes, if you have a look under the front here, there is a cast, in the cylinder head, there's a cast mount which mounts onto the frame. And when it hit the exhaust, it knocked the engine sideways in the bike, which snapped off that cast engine mount, and that wrote off the bike. So I thought, for the price of these upper engine bars, I will I'll go for these. Then you can see on both the upper and the lower bars, I've got these little plastic protectors, and that's really, they're just off eBay. If you put engine bar protectors into eBay, searching eBay, you'll find lots of different ones available. And that's really just protection, so that if I do drop the bike, hopefully it'll scratch and scuff these, which are cheap to replace, rather than damaging the dresser bars. You're also maybe intrigued to see that on the bottom here, I've got some little fold out cruising pegs. I'll just reposition the camera so you can see these better. Here they are then. Now, you could ask me what make of these, where to get them from. The honest answer is I cannot remember. I've had these a long time. I've possibly had these about 14 years, and they've been on a few different bikes. I originally bought them to fit on a BMW GS, but as you can see, they easily fit on any kind of engine bars. They're really nice, and what they do is they just give me that additional foot position to stretch out my legs a little bit more when I'm on a long run. And being able to move your legs into two different positions, that's also adjusts the position of the pressure of your bum on the seat. Makes it a lot more comfortable. It means you can go for a longer stretch without having to stop. These are nice because the actual foot pegs, they've got a nice broad rubberized foot peg there, but with these little grippy bits on. It pivots, so you can just pivot it to whatever angle is nice. And as you can see, they just click up out of the way when you're not using them. So they may seem a little bit daft, but they really do add a lot to comfort on long distance rides. And as you can see, I've got another little protector there, because when I've got that down, then my foot's on there and it just stops my boot chafing and rubbing on that engine bar. Moving up to the cockpit area, you can see that I fitted an auxiliary power switch there, which is the Triumph one. I know you can get aftermarket ones, but the Triumph one is just a plug and play, fits in very easily. I've made a separate video about fitting that, and that's pretty important when you are touring, because it allows you to charge electronic equipment, your phone and other things that you carry with you when you're traveling. So that gets used all the time when I'm traveling. And you'll also see here I've got my GPS mount, and again I did a separate video in which I showed how I wired that in. You've probably already spotted in the earlier shots that I've also got a radiator guard on there. Again, that's the standard Triumph radiator guard. It's a pretty heavy duty aluminium guard. Been very happy with that. Again, it's just important to protect these things, particularly if you're doing any off-road riding, even if it's just on gravel trails. And so I thought that was a pretty important bit of kit to put on there. Moving back along the bike, a common complaint about these bikes is excessive heat from the high exhaust. For my money, you don't buy a bike with a high level exhaust that runs right next to your leg and then complain about the heat. It's going to be there, isn't it? It's an exhaust pipe. However, you can do things to minimise that. Mine, being a 2019 model, had the catalytic converter in the forward pipe here, so I removed that, and that made a huge difference to the heat. I've made a separate video about removing that, but essentially all I did was cut the exhaust open, remove the catalytic converter and weld it back up again. But as you can see, I've also fitted one of these extra guards, or deflector you might call it, heat deflector on there. And a combination of removing the catalytic converter and fitting that deflector means that the heat is fine on my leg. You're still aware of it, you're still very much aware of heat on your leg, but it's tolerable. At the back of the bike, luggage carrying is obviously important if you're touring. So I've got a couple of racks on here. Firstly, on the top here, I've got the rear luggage rack, which is the Triumph item again. Found that's absolutely fine. Because I ride solo, I put a big bag on the pillion seat, and that acts as a backrest as well. So I'm not actually putting a lot of weight on this rear rack. There's usually just my tent goes on there. And then I have these unit garage pannier frames. One of the problems when I had the bike at first and I started touring, I used the Triumph pannier, rugged pannier, which is a great pannier, loved it, but it's a left side only, and I just felt I wanted to be able to put panniers on both sides. So again, I've made a separate video about installing this and about the bags that I use. But these unit garage pannier frames, they're very substantial, 4 mounting points for each side, so very robust. They carry quite a lot of weight, certainly as much as I ever want to carry when I'm touring, and it means that I can put bags on both sides. I went for the canvas and leather bags, sort of stylish option. I think probably style over function. But the nice thing about these is that Unit Garage make a range of different panniers. Both they make the canvas bags, they make some sort of soft leather ones, I think. They make some waterproof soft bags. So out of some kind of plasticky material, though of course it's a technical material, and they also make aluminium cases as well, all of which fit on the same rack. So it's a very flexible system. If I've got the soft bags, if I ever want to go and use hard cases in the future, I can just bolt them onto the same rack. So I do like that. Another very simple but very important addition to the bike is to fit swing-arm bobbins, so I can get the bike up on an axle stand. As you can see, I've got it up on an axle stand at the moment. This bike comes without a centre stand, and for me, the only time I would ever need a centre stand is when I'm working on the bike in the garage. Therefore, rather than fit an aftermarket centre stand and carry that extra weight around with me all the time, I thought I would just fit the bobbins, and that's worked fine for me. As you see, they're R&G bobbins, and there's already the holes for them there, so you just fit them in. And the final change to talk about at the moment is I fitted the foot on the sight stand. So as you can see, it's got that extra large footprint, which means because you have, there's no centre stand, as I mentioned a minute ago, so you always have to use the sight stand. Sometimes if you're on soft ground, the smaller foot can sink in, so it's very useful having a larger footprint like that. I do mainly camping when I'm touring, so I'm always parking the bike on a campsite on the grass. It just means it's more secure. Obviously you can use a footprint that you put under one you carry around, but I'm forever forgetting those and losing them. So, and as you can see, it just tucks out of the way there underneath the swing arm, so there's no issue with that at all. So there we are. Those are the changes that I've made to the bike to make it a better touring bike for me. But let's have a look at some of the changes that seem to be quite popular from looking on forums that I haven't made. I already mentioned that I'm running the standard low mudguard. Very, very popular change is putting the high mudguard on, but I feel that is a change which is one of style over function, and I want the functionality of the low mudguard to protect the bike and protect me when I'm touring, so I'm going to stick with that. And as I already mentioned, I've even added a fender extender on the bottom of that. Another popular change, particularly for people who ride off-road, is to replace the standard Triumph handguards with something a little bit more robust like bark busters. I've not done that, but I would probably say I've not done that yet. I hear reports from people that you only need to drop the bike once and you break those handguards. So, they do seem to be more of a just weather protection, if you like, rather than true crash protection. But as I've not had any mishaps yet, I'm still with those. But as I say, yet. Also the mirrors, I've got the standard mirrors. If you have a look at some of my other bikes, adventure touring bikes, my little KTM, I have changed the mirrors. But I'm just running on the standard mirrors, and there's nothing wrong with them. So I'll keep them for now. But those are changes that I may make in the future. The double tape mirrors is what I'll go for, because they're, as I found out with the KTM, very, very robust. I've dropped the KTM many times on both sides and never broken the mirror. Another change which I've not made yet, this is a very big yet, is the seat. Most riders complain that the seats are quite uncomfortable. Some people say they're fine. Most people find them uncomfortable. For my part, it's not the most comfortable seat, particularly for long days in the saddle touring. You can see on my touring videos that I usually put a sheepskin over the seat. That makes a huge difference, really works for me. But to be honest, this is something which I'm looking into, and I may well either have that seat modified or get a custom seat in the future. So watch this space. If I do that, I will do my usual. I will make a video looking at all of the different options that I reviewed and then which one I went for and why. But that's probably something for next year now. I've also not changed the standard foot pegs. A lot of people change these out for something wider. I've not felt the necessity to do that. I found them quite comfortable. You can see they've got the rubber inserts which you can remove if you want to for off-road riding. But they're absolutely fine. So I'm not going to change those. Not for the sake of it. If I find a good deal on some wider foot pegs sometime, I may well do it. All of these things that I've not changed, I'm not saying never, just they're not top priority, they're not important to me. You can also see that I'm still running the standard exhaust cans. I know a lot of people change those out for particularly the Arrow cans because they are lighter. But, to be honest, they're also quite expensive. And so, again, I'll say the same as I said with the other changes. I'm not saying I would never make that change, but I'm not going to fork out the money just for the cans just for the sake of it. If I see a nice set second-hand at a good price, then maybe I'll do it. But these are absolutely fine. And then the final change I want to talk about that's very popular that I've not done is the rear number plate changing and moving the number plate back and eliminating that plastic extension. And relocating the indicators obviously as well. Again, the reason I've not done this is because if you do that, you get more mud fling up the back, and also if you are riding on rough terrain, unless you really bend the number plate bracket back, it will dig into the back wheel because you get a lot of movement on this rear suspension. So I just don't feel the need to do it. Yes, it's maybe not the most attractive looking rear end, but it's functional. It keeps most of the dirt off. and so I'm just going to leave it. That I'm not going to bother changing it. There you have it. That's a quick review of all the changes that I've made to my Scrambler 1200 over the 4 years that I've owned the bike, all to make it better suit me as a touring bike. I accept that many of those changes will not be to the taste of all owners, and that's one of the beauties of this bike. You know, people customise them and make them their own. It's one of the lovely things about these bikes. So if you do own one of these bikes, or you're thinking about getting one and using it for touring, I hope you found this video useful. I will put links to as many of the things as I can as possible that I can find. I'll put links in the description to the video. So ride safe. See you again next time. Bye.